Hi, my name is Steve Jones, and I'd like to tell you a little about myself, my background, and why I would make a great teacher in South Korea. So let's start with my background. I'm 33 years old. I was born and raised in Melbourne, Florida, and up until my 10th grade year, I went to a small private school. Now, after I graduated high school, I went to Bryan College. Bryan College is in a small little town in Tennessee called Dayton. Now, when I got to college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to study, but I knew I wanted to study something that would allow me the opportunity to work with kids. Ultimately, I decided to study Christian education. Now, my second year into college, I decided to add on elementary education. Ultimately, I graduated with my Bachelor of Arts in Christian Education and a little over 20 hours of credits in elementary education. Now, while I was in college, I was able to work as a substitute teacher at 2 local public schools for all 4 years. I also had the opportunity to work as a youth director for a 1-year internship. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about my experience of working with children and also give you a quick picture of my career background. Now, soon after I graduated Bryan, I accepted a position as a youth director. This was a fully autonomous position where I was responsible for running a youth group. I ran my own budget. I was responsible for creating all of my own curriculum. I created trips going overseas and all throughout the country. I loved it. It was a great job, and ultimately through this I was offered another position with Disney Cruise Line running their teen programming. After I did that, I worked as a group leader for a high-end camp in Pennsylvania known as Trails End Camp. Now, as a group leader at Trails End Camp, it was my job to manage a staff of 12 counselors and 40 5th grade boys, which were known as the Pioneers. Now, throughout the summer, I had to train staff on a weekly basis. I held meetings where we would assess our strategies and determine goals for where we needed to head for the week. I ran and directed all of our daily operations. I evaluated our staff, held performance reviews, and I was responsible for just the daily routine running seamlessly. The summer went awesome. And because of it, Trails End Camp offered me a return contract for 2005. However, I had to decline because I had been offered a great position with the Onan Group, which is where I have been for the last 6 years. Now, when I was hired on with the Onan Group, I was hired on as an on-site manager. And in this role, I was responsible for managing all operations in regards to our temporary staff that were placed at a particular location. Now, the location that we had sent them was a relatively new client, and we had never had an on-site manager there before. We had one problem though. We had massive turnover issues. Well, what I did was I created a curriculum of career counseling that I was able to teach to every single new recruit that we hired at this particular location. Well, it was a great success. It reduced our turnover by nearly 80%, and our client was thrilled. And so was my boss, and because of it, he offered me a position as a branch manager. In the branch management role, I was able to set the record for the most business ever held in a single branch in our company, and that record actually still stands to this day. Due to the performance in that role, I was then offered a position as an area manager. Well, things in that position went very well, and because of that, was offered a position working as a regional manager where I was in charge of all operations in 3 different states. Now, things have gone very well with that. I love the company, it's been great, but I've missed working with kids. So let me explain how I got to right where I am right now talking to you. It was a typical day for me after work. I got home, I was relaxing on my couch, and my roommate walked downstairs after he finished an interview with a school overseas. He's also teaching overseas now as an ESL teacher. Well, he came to me and said, "Steve, I brought you up in the conversation and the school would like to talk to you also." Well, I said, why not? So the next day I talked to the school. Ultimately I said, you know what guys, I think I'm going to pass. But here's what happened. I went to work the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And every day, instead of thinking about what I was doing right then, I was thinking about how I'd much rather be working with kids again. The reality is that's my passion. It's been my passion. I never intended on getting in the business industry. It's been great. It's a great company, but I've been missing working with kids. Well, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So ultimately, I turned in a 2-month resignation so we could find the right person to replace me. Well, we've just recently found that person. I'm now working as an independent contractor for the company I just left until I find the right position. So here I am. So why South Korea? Well, honestly, that question is very easy for me to answer. You see, I have 2 friends that are in South Korea teaching as ESL teachers right now. One of them, he's been there for 5 years. Well, of course, when I made the decision to leave my current position and pursue a teaching position, I contacted him and I said, Dan, tell me about the schools, tell me about the culture, what's it like to live in South Korea? Well, through extensive conversations and through extensive research on all the countries that are hiring for ESL teachers, there's no question, Korea is the right place. Everything I've heard about the culture, the people, the schools, and of course the wonderful feedback that I've heard from my friends, there's no question I would love teaching in South Korea. So I look forward to seeing you there.